apologies for the constant shift in the light because the weather is extremely unpredictable. Hello. Today, I'm not really sure how I'm gonna frame this video, but we're gonna talk about one series that pulled me out of a year-long reading slump. Basically, last year I was feeling a bit down when it came to reading, and I realized it was because I was there the sun comes. I realized it was because I was pressuring myself to read books that I wasn't really in the mood for, and I am a mood reader. And then towards the end of the year, I listened to this random audiobook I found called Mistlefoe by Kimberly Lemming, and then I noticed that it was part of a series called Mead Mishaps. So in the beginning of this year, I decided to read the first book in the series, That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. And yes, I purposely started reading these books solely because of the titles. So the first one is That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. The second one is That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion at a Werewolf. And the last one has the most boring one out of the three, but it's still fine. That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Human. There's also a Bump In Boohail. What is wrong with the sun? I'm crying. Wow. Anyways, yes, there is also a Bump In Boohail, which is a novella. So why am I saying all of this? Well, because today I'm gonna go through all of those books in this series and discuss the characters, the summaries of each book, so spoilers ahead. So imagine you're back in high school, but instead of reading the classics, you're analyzing smut. That's also fantasy and comedy. Because that is what this series is about. Fantasy, comedy, smut. So let's go. So enthusiastic. Wow. Okay, let's start with That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. The story begins in Boohail, a small town where our main character, Cinnamon, lives on a cinnamon farm with her family. The town always selects chosen ones to fight for Goddess against demons lurking outside the kingdom, and Cinnamon is ecstatic once she finds out she has not been selected. Going back home drunk, I think you know what's about to happen, she stumbles upon an injured man and helps him, only to realize that, oh no, he is a demon. He attacks her and she manages to escape, however, not for long, as the demon, whose name we find out is Fallon, appears at her family's doorstep, asking for help to defeat the fake goddess that was imprisoning his race for ages by making them go crazy. And the only thing that helps them get out of the daze is, drumroll please, cinnamon. Not the character, but the spice. Yeah. Together they start traveling around the kingdom to destroy fake goddess's goblets that she keeps in her temples. In one city, they meet an innkeeper who helps them destroy one goblet, and while doing so, Cinnamon rescues a werewolf, Bachelor number 2, and another demon who joins their gang. Fallon goes crazy and turns into a dragon, destroying half of the city after he realizes they have been enslaving demons to keep them as their pets. They all escape on a ship with many more creatures and embark to destroy the final goblet. On that trip, they meet another demon that is also from a dragon race, and Bachelor number 3, who was under a spell and fought with Fallon. Once he comes back to his senses, he helps them reach the temple, where the final battle with the fake goddess and her chosen ones happens. The fake goddess is destroyed, the demons are free, and Fallon and Cinnamon go on their honeymoon. Oh yeah, they get married, aka Fallon gives her the maid bite, and they bang. The end. That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. For the first book, not bad. One thing that keeps happening in the books in this series is that it has a lot of tropes that I, in particular, don't like usually. But I think because of the execution of them in here, they work. And one of the main points that I really like about this series is that it doesn't take itself seriously. The first thing that I want to say is good in this series is comedy. I love Terry Pratchett's humor. It's funny because it's ridiculous, and the same was here. It's funny because it's ridiculous. And it was also relatable. There was a lot of relatable quotes. Another thing that I did enjoy is the family dynamics. Cinnamon has 2 brothers, Cumin and Chili, and the way they talk, the way they're behaving feels very relatable. I have a younger brother, so definitely the way they bicker is very much so sibling so I appreciated that. The last thing that I did enjoy in this story are definitely the names. I cannot talk about this series without talking about names. Not just the title of all of the books in this series, but also the names of the characters. Our main character is called Cinnamon, her best friend is called Bree, the demon is called Fallon. I'm gonna actually talk about that later, but her brothers Cumin and Chili, even the horses, Crash and Smash, nice. One thing that I did notice, besides the like men that are connected to Cinnamon, so like her brothers, like Cumin and Chili, all the other male characters have very bland names. The main guy's name is Fallon, then the next love interest in the second book is Felix, the third love interest is called Dante. Also, why Dante? I cannot think about Dante without thinking about Divine Comedy. This story is quite simple in its premise, and it is also like simple in its writing, but that's not even a problem, because when I'm reading like these types of books, I don't really care about that. Like, as I said, I'm not like here to analyze the classics or something. Why is the sun? I feel like I'm just squinting the whole video. There was one speech that Fallon made in this book that I just could not understand why it was necessary. Basically, him and Cinnamon were traveling to this other town, and previous to that, Fallon told Cinnamon like, yeah, I'm gonna make you my wife, you know, just casual stuff. And while they were traveling, he started explaining to her all the things that, you know, he would do to her. It's just kept going, and it was described as long as like the whole smut scene would usually be. And as I'm reading that, like, he's just explaining, like he's just telling her, like nothing is happening. Why didn't we just read about it happening? I don't know, I just couldn't understand why the tropes in all of these stories are mating, monster romance, and especially this one has this touch you and you'll die. It has this like super overbearing, overprotective demon that's gonna like kill everyone if anyone just like slightly touches his love interest. Again, I'm not really a fan of that usually, but in this story it works. This book doesn't take itself seriously. It is for comedy purposes, and I like when these tropes are not taken seriously, because my problem with a lot of fantasy romance stories is I love fantasy, I love romance, I read both, and because of that you would think I would enjoy fantasy romance. Why did my voice break? But somehow I don't. And I think the reason why is they use a lot of these tropes that I don't like, and then on top of that they use them like super serious, and I don't like that. I'm really not enjoying that. But here it's just for the goofy sake. And to just come back to this whole like touch her and you'll die, even though it has that, the story does reflect upon it through our main character Cinnamon, because she does tell Fallon constantly like, yeah, you kind of are not supposed to do that. So if you're into that, this is gonna be for you. And if you're not even into that, I think you should still give this book a try, because again, I'm not particularly fan of all of those tropes, but it uses them in a very interesting way. So it was still very engaging and fun to read. Let's now move on to the second book in this series, which is a novella called Mistlefoe. For the novellas, so Mistlefoe and the Bump In Boohail, I'm not gonna have any drawn out summaries, because the stories in these novellas don't really matter, to be honest. Even though Mistlefoe does have a plot, I'm not sure if that's like the most important part of this book, because also this plot is the most separate out of all the other stories, because other stories revolve around the same cast of main characters and this one has separate ones. But there is one character, well, maybe arguably two characters, that are important for later on in this story, and the main one is Alexis. But yeah, who is Alexis? For that, I need to just simply like go over the premise. Problem is, I don't remember it that much, so I do believe there was... So the main girl goes to this fox demon Luca, who enchanted her sword that now just talks crap about everybody and is very horny. And the two of them make a deal for the main girl to pretend to be Luca's girlfriend, because he's going to some party at some dragon's castle, and they fall in love. That's pretty much it, I think. But the main reason why I want to talk about this story is because to introduce the main character. Well, I say the main character. She's not the main character, but she will be later on. And that's Alexis, the talking sword. But yes, this talking sword Alexis, what you need to know about her so far is that she's always horny and she's the main character. And that's pretty much it. Let's just go over quickly about what I liked. It was cute. I was listening to it as an audiobook, as I said. It's a holiday novella. I mean, Mistlefoe, get it? Haha. And the audiobook is under 2 hours. So I was just thinking it's gonna be some fun, cutesy-tootsy story. And no, it did go also into smut. So, I mean, I appreciate. Nice. I really don't have anything to say about it. It was just a very short story, novella, is short. And yeah, it goes straight to the point. One thing that I really love about Kimberly Lemming is that like she knows why you're there. You're not there for like extensive descriptions of characters and like, going into their psyche. No, you're there for the smut and a bit of fantasy vibes. And that's all. And the author knows it and she delivers. So yeah, like what's there not to like? Anyways, that's it that I can say about Mistlefoe. Moving on. This time around, we're following Bree, Cinnamon's best friend, who throws a love potion at werewolf Felix, if you can tell from the title, who then trails after her everywhere she goes and tells her she's his mate. She doesn't believe him because she thinks it's only the influence of the love potion. They try to remove the spell, but realize the only way it might work is if they have sex. Then they have sex. With the tentacle monster, mind you. Kind of a bondage play for fantasy worlds. Anyway, Felix is still very much in love afterwards. I know, I was shocked too. And Bree's afraid she might start catching feelings for Felix, but he would leave once the spell wears off. In the main plot, some women start disappearing from the village, and they don't know anything about it until Alexis the Talking Sword shows up, and Bree gets kidnapped alongside Usha, the innkeeper from the first book. Turns out there was a Red Cloaks cult that was trying to awaken the new god, similar to Miva from book 1, but only this time it would be a god called Omus, who is in the body of a giant lobster. Like a really big one. All the kidnapped women manage to escape, and Bree destroys the new god by telling it about the Megaverse, and the godlike entity is too shy to listen to it. Felix's love potion wears off, but he is, another shocker, still in love with Bree, and they live happily ever after. Oh yeah, and Bree slowly turning into a werewolf because of the mate bite. This book has the funniest title in my opinion. However, my first criticism is I don't think it's truthful. Because, if I remember correctly, Bree wasn't exactly drunk. She was tipsy, I think. Lies? Was I lied to? But yeah, that might also be due to me not remembering the beginning correctly. Excuses for that if I'm in the wrong. This book I was actually the most excited for. I think the reason why is because in that moment when I started reading it, I was in my whole werewolf era. So first it started with Bride by Ali Hazelwood. So it's a book about like a vampire and a werewolf. So because of that, I think that I was also looking forward to that time I got drunk and yeeted a werewolf. Tried to say that a couple of times fast. But unfortunately, I was the most disappointed by this book. There are a couple of reasons why, but I'm gonna get into them a bit later. So first I'm gonna talk about what I did actually like about this story. First of all, Felix, the main guy, is a cutie, right? If I had to describe him, the way I saw him was like Tamaki from Uran High School Host Club, because Tamaki is also just this doofus that everybody gets annoyed at some point. But essentially, he's a very likable character. He is problematic in some ways, but ultimately, he's a goofball and a cutie. Like, you understand why he's liked. Felix is just a werewolf Tamaki, at least for me. One of the tropes in this whole series is about mating. Werewolves imprint just immediately by like sight. Like they just see their mate and then they're like, which was very interesting because time-wise in the story, I think a couple of months have passed since Cinnamon and Fallon and all the other demons came into Boohail. So it was very funny that Cinnamon's best friend and Cinnamon's newly found best friend never met up until this point. Like, that's shady. Why were they not meeting before? Anyways, that's just like, again, I'm going off tangent. So like, he immediately falls in love with Bree. So since the beginning, he's just like yearning for her so much. And I did appreciate that the author added Felix POVs in this story. There are no Fallon POVs in the first book, and I maybe appreciate that. I don't know how his POVs would look like, honestly. But for Felix, it was fun. I would like more Felix POVs, to be honest, but like it was fine. At least we got something. One thing that I really enjoyed about Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldry that I talked about in my January books video is that there is this whole like small town that really loves this one erotica writer. A book about books is always a fun thing to read, and the books are also very important here, especially romance books, because Bree, our main character, is a smut reader as well. She likes the spice, and then the same things that are in the book happen to her. Wow. I completely forgot to put things on the board. Yeah, again, names are still very iconic. There is a horse called Chronic. Then there are twin sisters Harmony and Lyric. Gouda, Gouda, the brother. But again, as I mentioned, male characters do have very interesting names. One of them is called Chad. Then we have a father, like the religious figure, as in like father, called Dave. But of course, I cannot talk about this book without talking about Omegaverse is a very prominent aspect of this book. I mean, the main character is a werewolf, so you might expect that. And I was expecting it all, right? Like, because when I started reading The Bride, I think I maybe was reading another book that had werewolves in it. I just forgot. But like, I was expecting it all, right? And right before that, I rewatched the Lindsay Alice Omegaverse lawsuit video. And the fact that the main villain in this story, that giant lobster, was defeated because he was too shy to listen to Bree talk about Omegaverse tropes. Classic. However, as I said in the beginning, there were some downfalls which unfortunately made me dislike this book the most. No, I wouldn't say dislike. I would just say disappointed the most with this book, because Bree and Felix were side characters in the first book, right? Bree as Cinnamon's best friend, and Felix as this like demon that Cinnamon freed. However, even in this book, where they were supposed to be the main characters, they still felt as the side characters. And that was kind of the sad thing for me, because both of them are very enjoyable characters, but I feel like we had more plot revolving around other characters rather than the two of them. There was even still a Cinnamon POV, and like the book ended with Dante's POV, which I can understand because the next novel in this series is about Dante. It still was very sad, because also this is the shortest book out of all of the like 3 main novels. The romance and the plot in the story was weirdly balanced, and also the way romance was developing was very weird. What I mean by this is like they hit it off quite fast. I mean, naturally, because she throws a love potion at him. They do hit it off quite early, and you get like a spicy scene very early on. Even though, of course, slow burn is like very usual in romance genre, it wasn't the case here, right? But I feel like it was still tried to be played off as slow burn, because after their bang fest, they started again being like, oh no, like I don't know this person, I'm shy. What? You just did it. What do you mean? But yeah, definitely what did strike me as weird was them rushing into the romance and then pretending as if nothing happened. So that was a bit weird. There. One thing that I forgot to talk about. Oh, in the first book, right? Fallon calls Cinnamon his rabbit. The context is he's a dragon and he calls her his rabbit, because like she's running away from him or something, but it's still in this like prey and the preyed upon. But it's even weirder in this book, because Felix, a werewolf, calls or just like in general a wolf pretty much calls his loved one lamb. Now, the reason why this was disgusting to me is because I grew up being called a lamb by my grandma, because in my language, grandmas usually call their grandchildren like sunshine, gold, lamb. So imagine reading a smut scene where this character keeps calling the girl lamb, and I was scarred. However, it does get better in the third book, okay? Dante got that one thing right. I have a note here saying that this whole book, it felt like I was high, although I was never high. But I wish to believe if I ever was, it would be like this book. And I think that's a compliment. Okay, I'm gonna be also fast with A Bump in Boohail, because it's also a short novella, and it doesn't really introduce anything specific, but still it's part of this whole series. And basically the summary of this whole story is that Fallon is digging a hole. He's making a dungeon where he is going to gather all his treasures and just gold and all the knickknacks that he has back from his old castle. Cinnamon doesn't know what exactly he's doing digging that hole, so she decides to go and investigate. Cinnamon gets attacked by this like supposed monster, but it turns out that monster was Dante and her brother Chili. Then Fallon and Cinnamon bang and scare Chili and Dante in return. Oh yeah, this is a Halloween special. That's why all about this scaring. I don't know really what to say about it. You don't learn anything new about the characters. It's just like a silly Halloween special. And yeah, it was fine for that. It was nice getting back with the same characters from book 1. So again, it was following Cinnamon and Fallon. So yeah, that was enjoyable. What I didn't understand was when there was that like spicy scene basically. It was very weird to understand what position they were in. I could not understand it for the life of me. But that sometimes happens, it's just part of the experience of reading romance books, being constantly confused. But that's pretty much the only thing that I can say about this. Like, there's nothing else to mention. It was a Halloween special. It was fun and enjoyable. Moving on. Remember Sherry, Cinnamon's lost and thought to be dead sister? She's actually alive, yay, and has been kidnapped for the past 4 years by a dragon, and coincidentally, Dante appears to visit that dragon. So she drugs Dante to save her, but because of that, he bites her as a mate. After some bickering over the new situation they are in, dragon slut magic as Sherry puts it, they go on a trip to see the unicorns. On the trip they find Alexis who joins them. Dante gets abducted by some cloaked figures in a colosseum that holds demons hostage for fights. Cherry rescues him and they at last go to visit unicorns, declare love for one another. Cherry finally tells Dante where she's from, yes, that is only done at the very end of the story, and he reveals to her he knows her sister. They reunite, Dante and Fallon probably start a kingdom in Boohail and go to gather riches from some sleeping beauty ancient dragon, and they live happily ever after. The end. We have finally reached the final book in this series. That time I got drunk and saved a human. Another misleading title. This is alluding to Dante, okay? So before it was Cinnamon's story, so that time I got drunk and saved the demon. Cinnamon saved the demon after she got drunk. Bree got drunk and yeeted a love potion at Felix, but this was Dante getting drunk and then saving Cherry, right? He didn't get drunk. He got high. It was supposed to be called That Time I Got High and Saved a Human, okay? But I understand for continuation purposes, fine. So as I said in the beginning, I was mostly excited about reading all these stories because of the titles of the books, right? And because this one had the blandest title of them all, saving a human. Who wants to read about that, right? I was not as excited about that one as I was about the first two. However, it turns out that this one was the most enjoyable for me at least. And yeah, so let's go over the reasons why I found this one the most enjoyable. Dante, our main character. So you got introduced to him in the first book, then also in the second book. He was also in the novella, A Bump In Boohail. So like he's scattered along all of those stories. So you got to know him a bit. And finally, for the final book in this trilogy, you get to hear his story, him finding his mate. However, the thing about Dante, right? He's a dummy. In the beginning, he's seen as this 700-year-old dragon who needs to be respected. But more and more, he just becomes this dummy that likes lemon pies. But Dante and Cherry's love story, I actually enjoyed because even though it was bumpy, it was still cute. It was just adorable to read about it. So for example, Cherry, she wants to visit the unicorns. She's our fantasy nerd. Dante kind of makes all of those dreams come true for her, and he just goes and takes her to see the unicorns, and then they go on this wall of dragons or something where each dragon puts what do dragons have, a paw? Anyway, dragons leave a mark on the wall, and he also made her leave it because she's his mate and everything. So it was actually very cute to read about their love story. And as I said last time about Fallon calling Cinnamon a rabbit, then Felix calling Bree a lamb, Dante at least didn't call her an animal name. Well, not an animal name that meant a prey, but later on he was just calling her princess. I also put a note about the things that I liked. This book had a map. I love maps, so that was good. Now I have to talk about the biggest trigger in this book, and for that I will refer once more to this one. So in Bride, our main character Misery does not know that she is Love's mate. From the very first page that she is his mate. Like, even if you didn't start reading, you know, because it's also how it's marketed. Misery just constantly is thinking like, no, I cannot possibly be his mate, although I wish I was. And you're just pissed off at her the whole time. Like, what is the matter with you? And similar happened here. Cherry, as I said, is Cinnamon's long lost sister. Dante constantly asks Cherry where she is from so that he can, like, you know, get her home. But she doesn't want to tell him because, and I understand this point, now when she learned that, like, the goddess was fake and that the demons are roaming freely, she's still afraid of them and she still thinks that, like, that's all bad. But even when she starts trusting him and whatnot, she still does not want to tell him where she's from. And it's played off as a joke, you know, like, you know, he doesn't know where she's from, but we know. It was just annoying. It was just plain annoying. And the whole ending just felt very, very weird. So, as I said, again, Cherry is Cinnamon's long-lost sister. Everyone in her family thinks that she's dead. And you're kind of expecting the last chapter to be about, you know, two sisters, family reuniting. It was supposed to be a very emotional scene. You barely see it. It just felt very weird how it got played off in the end. Like it did not matter at all. Like we didn't just read the whole first book about like how Cinnamon has trauma because of losing her sister. I don't know if you can read, but the next thing that I want to talk about is not enough Dante's POVs. The same problem as I mentioned I had in the second book, which was with Felix. And because Felix was also a character in the first book, we got a bit of his chapters, like from his POV. And I did really enjoy it. And we didn't have a lot of those, but still, we had some. I expected more in this book because Dante was a very important character in all of the books, so to speak. And obviously Cherry is the main character, but I also wanted more from Dante. That's it, actually, what I have to say about this story. So yeah, we're done. I didn't even use it as much as I wanted to, so it doesn't even matter. Are these books cringy? Yeah. Is the story, like, you know, lacking any character depth or something? Yeah, but like, that's not the point. The point is the smut, right? No, I'm kidding. I mean, yes, but also it's just like fun story, fun fantasy story. And I don't think we have enough of those. We always, obviously fantasy genre is always connected with like these big epic quests that are super serious. But sometimes you just need some very goofy fantasy story that has giant lobsters as main villains. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I do believe we need more of this. So if you know of any other stories that are similar to this, please let me know, because I realized if I cannot read regular, like mainstream fantasy romance, then at least I can read this, because this I find enjoyable at least. So yeah, I want more stories like these that don't take themselves too seriously and that are just there for the vibes, for the fun of it, and to just like let us enjoy it. It's very fast to read as well. So I would definitely recommend this for anyone who is also kind of burnt out by a lot of serious fantasy romance stories and is just looking for some like very light read that does not take long to read and is just meant for fun. If you're searching for fantasy comedy smut, then this is for you. I'm happy that I read this, and if there will be any more books in this series, then yeah, I'm gonna definitely read them. If you read these books, let me know what you thought about them. And if you didn't, well, I'm sorry for spoiling all of them. I hope you'll have a wonderful day and that you're not in a reading slump. And even if you are, that is fine, okay? Like, I feel like there's too much pressure put to read as much as possible. Just read at your own pace. If you feel like reading, read. If you don't feel like it, don't read, okay? There's plenty of other things to do. But yeah, just enjoy the reading. That's the fun of it, okay? Enjoy the journey, okay? What am I saying? I should stop, all right? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Ah!